Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is completely self-funded, produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. Consider making a small donation to support the podcast. Go to bit.ly/support, capital G, capital T, and podcast. I repeat, bit.ly/supportgt podcast. Thank you so much. And for more information, please visit Natalie's website, join the podcast's Instagram page, and subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates on future episodes. Welcome to this special series on the many faces of trauma. In each episode, we'll explore one trauma type in a clear, gentle way. What it is, how it can show up in daily life, and one small step that can help your nervous system feel a little safer. Nothing here is meant to diagnose you, and you're always invited to take what fits and leave the rest. And because this is trauma work, we'll end every episode with a short grounding practice you can do anywhere. Before we begin, a gentle content note. We'll be talking about trauma in general terms today. There will be no graphic details, and you don't have to push through this episode. If you notice your body tightening, your breath changing, or your mind drifting away, that's not failure. That's your nervous system doing its job. And you're allowed to pause, come back later, or choose a different episode. So why this series exists? So if you've been around trauma long enough, personally, professionally, or as a helper, you've probably noticed something. Trauma doesn't come in only one shape. Some people think of trauma as one big event, like an accident or an assault, or like a disaster, like in the previous episode. And yes, those experiences can be deeply traumatic. But many people carry trauma that doesn't fit the classic picture. Trauma from early years, trauma from relationships where safety wasn't reliable, trauma from systems and environments that kept the body on constant alert. Trauma that is quiet, hard to name, and easy to minimize. And when people can't name what happened, they often turn inward and assume something must be wrong with me. So this series has one main goal: to offer a map that helps you name your experience without overwhelming you. So not a map that turns life into labels, not a map that makes you compare pain, but a map that helps you understand. That helps you say, this makes sense. My nervous system adapted. And if you are a partner, friend, parent, or clinician listening, this map will also help you understand what's going on beneath behaviors that might look confusing from the outside. So let's have a look what I mean by trauma type. We need to be clear about language, because when I say trauma type, I don't mean a rigid category that neatly captures a person. Trauma isn't a personality. And trauma is not your identity. A type, as I use it in this series, is more like a pathway, a common pattern of how overwhelm and threat get stored in the nervous system. And you may recognize yourself in more than one pathway, and that's normal. Think of it like this. Two people can both have back pain, but for one person, it came from an accident, and from another, it came from years of tension, stress, and poor sleep. The symptom might look similar, but the pathway matters because it guides what helps. That's what we're doing here, identifying pathways so healing can become less random. So the trauma map that I'm trying to draw here has big 5 pathways. You can look at this map in a simple way. Over the next episodes, split into 2 seasons, we'll explore trauma through 5 big pathways. The first pathway is foundations. We'll start with the basics, what trauma is, what it isn't, and how people talk about small t and big T. And we're not doing this to rank pain, we're doing it to reduce confusion and shame. The next pathway is called early imprint trauma. This includes experiences from early life when the nervous system is still forming. For example, preverbal trauma, which is before words, when your body learns safety or danger through sensation and connection. And then attachment and relational trauma. So this is when closeness wasn't reliable, attunement wasn't consistent, or you had to become easy to be kept around. Then developmental trauma. We've spoken about that in previous episodes, so we're just going to add on to what I've already spoken about. So developmental trauma is about ongoing stress in childhood that shapes patterns, emotions, and self-concept. And then intergenerational trauma, which is what gets carried forward through family roles, silence, fear, or unresolved grief. So if you've listened to my earlier episodes on developmental trauma, this series will build on that, not repeat it. We'll keep it accessible, and you'll have places to go deeper if you want to. The next path is event-based trauma. And this is what many people picture first, a single incident trauma when before and after the event split. Or medical and birth trauma, when help and fear got intertwined. And we'll keep these episodes gentle and practical. The next pathway looks at society-shaped and environment-based trauma. Because trauma doesn't only happen in private, it can also be shaped by the world around us, such as discrimination or chronic vigilance, poverty and social exclusion, migration and displacement. And we'll talk about these in a way that is validating and grounded, without going into graphic content like war. And then the next pathway, the last pathway, is what trauma can become. So finally, we'll talk about common outcomes and patterns, such as complex trauma and intro-level complex post-traumatic stress disorder, disassociation as a protective response, and also how trauma can affect the body, such as in sleep, pain, in your gut, fatigue. And we'll be careful here. So this is not medical advice, and we won't make promises, but we'll give you language that helps you take your symptoms seriously without becoming afraid of your body. I'm going to use the nervous system lens that I've learned from polyvagal theory. So one reason trauma types get confusing is that people focus on the story and they miss the impact it has on the nervous system. So throughout this series, we'll use an easy nervous system lens. You can think of your system in 3 broad states. So safety and connection. So when your nervous system senses enough safety, you can breathe more fully, think clearly, feel present and connected. So life still has stress, but it's manageable. In polyvagal terminology, that is the ventral vagal state. The next state is mobilized protection. This is the sort of the fight or flight energy. You might notice anxiety, anger, urgency, restlessness, racing thoughts, tight shoulders, and a busy mind. Your system is saying something might be dangerous, prepare. In polyvagal language, this is where you're mobilized sort of in sympathetic. And then the third state is shutdown protection. So this is when the system goes into a kind of conservation mode. You might feel numb, foggy, flat, exhausted, disconnected, or like you're watching life from a distance. In that state, the system is saying, you can't fight or run, so I'll shut down to survive. This is the dorsal state in polyvagal language. If you want to know more, there's also another series, which I'll link in the show notes, which explains a little bit more about polyvagal language. But here's what matters most. Trauma isn't just what happened. Trauma is what happened inside your nervous system when you didn't have enough support, choice, or protection. That means healing often involves more than insight. It involves helping your nervous system experience, little by little, that the present is different from the past. And that's why every episode ends with a short practice. Not because it fixes everything, but because it offers your body a small signal of safety. So how to use this series without overwhelm? Because it's important to make this series workable for you. So first, you don't have to listen in order. If an episode feels activating, or even a title feels activating, skip it for now. Start where you feel curious or steady. 2. You may recognize yourself in multiple episodes. That doesn't mean you're broken. It often means your system adapted in more than one context. 3. This series is not a diagnosis tool. Some listeners will have formal diagnoses such as PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorders. Others won't. Either way, your experience matters. 4. If you're a helper or a clinician, use the series as a language bridge. Many people struggle to explain what's happening to them, and sort of this map gives them words without pressure. 5. If you're supporting someone, one of the most helpful shifts is this. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" ask, "What happened? And what does your system need to feel safe now?" That single shift reduces shame and creates connection. So now let's do a brief practice together. This is a short grounding practice and it's safe for most. You may keep your eyes open if you prefer, or close them. And if any part doesn't feel right, you can modify it or skip it. So as a first step, orient yourself. Let your eyes gently move around the room. Find 3 neutral objects. Not meaningful, not emotional, just neutral. And you might name them quietly. Lamp, chair, window. Step 2. Now we're going to take a couple of breaths together and focus on longer exhale. Now take a normal inhale and let your exhale be a little longer than your inhale. Not forced, just slightly longer. And we'll do that 6 times. I do it in my pace, you choose yours. And the last one. Step 3. Feel the contact of your feet on the floor or the support of the chair or the couch. If it feels okay, place one hand on your chest or your upper arm, somewhere that feels neutral. And say to yourself gently, in this moment, I am here. And then add one small choice. The next supportive step for me is, let that be small, a glass of water, a short walk, a text to a safe person, or a pause. If you've noticed even a 1% shift, more breath, more presence, that counts. That is nervous system work. So if you'd like support as you listen through this series, check my website for free resources offered for both those affected by trauma and grief and those supporting them. There are materials here to help you take the next step in a way that feels steady and not overwhelming. In the next episode, we'll start with the foundation, what trauma is and what it isn't, so you can hold the whole series with more clarity and less self-judgment. So thank you for being here today. And until next time.
Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.